Американская фирма Transceptor Technology приступила к производству компьютеров «Персональный спутник».
Hey, what's up, guys? Gonna do a quick episode today. I feel like that's the best course of action to generally take to keep my ADHD kind of within the margins. You guys have listened to episodes before where, like, the longer it goes, the more drunk I get, and I tend to ramble and not make sense, and you start to ask yourself, and it's not just you, it's me too. As I'm talking, like the voice in my head is like, Heath, how the fuck did you get here? And so you're not the only one. You're not the only one. But anyway, so like I said, we're gonna keep it short. We're gonna keep it sweet. I just have a couple. I guess you would call them anecdotes, if you will, or if you won't. But before I get to these, I have a few things I want to mention. One is these glasses I'm wearing. Blue blockers by Raw Optics. I do spend a fair amount of time in front of a computer while I'm, researching some stuff for a podcast or for my job. If you know what I do, you're laughing right now, but that's neither here nor there. And what I've been mixing my vodka with recently, which I only drink Ciroc now, because if it's good enough for P. Diddy, it's good enough for Heath Evans. And if he can speak about himself in the third person, so can I, God damn it. But is what I've been mixing my vodka with lately is this bubbly shit. I don't know if you guys have had it before. It is delicious. I would like to say I've drank it by itself and without alcohol, but that would be a fucking lie. So, anyways, but moving along, as we're getting in danger of me doing what I normally do. A couple anecdotes to think about, and then just one pretty fucking cool quote by probably one of the most famous Holocaust survivors of all time, besides Anne Frank, Viktor Frankl, author of Man's Search for Meaning and inventor of what's called logo therapy, which is intensive type of therapy in the, if you're in the psychological I think that's right, psychologist realm, something. You can correct me, shoot me an email, CC me in it if I'm wrong. So these anecdotes I want to talk about really quickly are kind of having to do with how small things can make a big difference. First is where we're going to start off in and end up here as well, is in the 19th century. Medicine, something a lot of us are talking about right now. So this is probably, well, not probably, it is relevant. The 19th century was commonly referred to as the golden age of the physician and scientist. So science and medicine, the golden age of science and medicine. Along with that came a lot of, I don't know why I'm holding this pen. Along with a lot of that came a mass, accumulation of physical science to get, science-based medicine. So one of the things that came along with that is that autopsies became all the fucking rage in this time in medical schools with doctors, so much to the point where doctors and medical schools would employ grave robbers to go and dig up the graves of the poor, because nobody, of course, nobody gave a shit about them. I don't know if we still do, but that's another topic for another episode. But so these physicians and medical schools would pay grave robbers to get more bodies to do these autopsies on. And that, so that was going on big time. And along with that was subsequently there was an incredibly high, an abnormally high infant mortality rate that was going along. That was odd, considering this, that we were entering into this golden age of medicine. A disproportionately high infant mortality rate. So that goes on and goes on and goes on and goes on. And around 1847. Actually, let me take a step back here for a second. So, along with doing all these autopsies and with this, more craving of science-based medicine, it was, it almost started to be like something of a bragging rights in between physicians of, who is performing the most autopsies, dissections, things like that. And so citizens knew this. And a lot of these doctors would come right from performing these to caring for the patients that they normally did, that, of why their hospitals and practices survived. And it started to be a, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? A status symbol, if you will, for like the more fucked up a doctor looked when he came in to treat you, the better. Like, you knew, like, oh, this is the dude. Like, I fucking lucked out. Woo. Even though he had not taken any time to clean himself or, use sterile technique in anything. But so very, very, very interesting. Very far from what we are now. Like, if a doctor walked in and he had like fucking blood and guts and stuff off, on him from God knows what, we'd be like, let's take a time out here. But anyway, so that went along until a Hungarian doctor. Let me grab my notes here. This is proof that I do write stuff down. A Hungarian doctor named, I'm going to butcher this, so Hungarians, take it easy on me. Ignaz, I-G-N-A-Z, Semelweis, 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 a Hungarian doctor who worked at Vienna General Hospital, started to see this correlation with the Vienna. Again, to go back a little bit, the Vienna General Hospital was one of the leading medical schools / hospitals of the time, to kind of give you some context to frame this within. So he started to notice that there's this abnormally high infant mortality rate that's going on, and along with the number of autopsies that are being performed. So he was one of the only, not one of the only, he was the only person that kind of put two and two together that was like, well, these doctors are going directly from performing these autopsies to going in and delivering children without cleaning themselves, without using any kind of sterile technique, just going in, right in, boom, boom, boom. So he kind of came up with the idea of like, well, at the minimum, let's start having these doctors wash their hands before they start delivering the children. All the other shit, can, stay on, your smocks, whatever you're wearing, whatever. But at the minimum, wash your hands. So he implemented that at the Vienna General Hospital, and wouldn't you know, the infant mortality rates started plummeting. And you would think this is a good thing. However, Ignaz, his colleagues, were furious about this. Furious to the point where they petitioned to have him fired, which he was, and went a step further and had him institutionalized. And that was the last we heard of him. But my point in this being is that sticking with small things make a big difference. And this is applicable for what's going on right now, because as what we've seen is improved hygiene and stuff like that has been a great barrier and defense against COVID-19. But just the act of washing hands ended up saving hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of babies. Moving along, our next example, in 1917, there was a... actually, hold on, I'm going to take a drink. Ciroc and bubbly. So, just in case you're wondering. Okay, let's take two. So 1917. So we're bumping ahead. What was that? 1845 or something. So, okay, 60 some odd years, whatever. Outbreak of poliomyelitis in New York City. Again, people are trying to figure this out. This it's not a new virus at this point, but is spreading more and starts seemingly specifically attacking a certain age group of children. 16, I believe it's 16 and under, seem to be the most susceptible. And so, the physicians of the time, the health departments of the time are trying to figure out why this age group, and it's not exclusively this age group, because as you know, Roosevelt, our president, was inflicted with it. Other random people that were out of that 16 and under age group would be afflicted with poliomyelitis and crippled from it. But primarily it seemed to be this age group of 16 and under. And so we start to ask why. And then we start to look at statistics of just like we do now with COVID and stuff like that. We start to look at statistics of, are there, because in medicine, you want to start breaking stuff down to the smallest, I don't know, for lack of a better way of putting it, the smallest common denominator, to try to find you become like sort of an investigator because you want to find, the lowest common denominator and start to find patterns. And when you start to find those patterns, then some things can start to open up and we start to, possibly see some things that we didn't see before. So they were doing the same thing in 1917 during this outbreak in New York. And they started to notice, well, there's a massive spike in cases of poliomyelitis in the summer months, primarily late July and August. So as they go on, and the science starts to come out, and so science was getting surprisingly advanced at this time. Coming off of what I just talked about in the previous anecdote, coming off of the golden age of the physician, science had taken some massive leaps and bounds. And one of them was they isolated a cell that was spreading polio, and it was a cell that the poliovirus specifically targeted as part of its delivery system and transmission system, its method of transmission. And that was what's called an M cell. An M cell is generally, I think always found in, physicians correct me, in the lower gut and intestine. So viruses, being sort of a brilliant collective consciousness that they are, seem to know how to stay alive and spread themselves. So is how they were spreading themselves in a lot of cases was through fecal matter, which led them to the discovery that is why it was getting why those 16 and under were being the most afflicted by this virus, was that one thing, during the turn of the century that was common that's not common anymore, obviously for health reasons that we've found out, and the advances in science that we've had in our generation, is public baths and public pools were kind of all the rage at the time, and frequented mostly by teenagers and younger. And this was before the mandatory chlorination of water, which most municipalities moved to shortly thereafter. But kids would swim, kids would bathe in these public pools, public baths, and fecal matter would be ingested through the water. And thus, that was the major method of transmission at the time. So what did New York City do once health officials and doctors isolated this? Was they closed down public baths and public pools. Subsequently, the number of polio cases drastically dipped. Obviously didn't disappear. It was one of the worst viruses in history as far as afflicting and crippling children, but bought them enough time to eventually create a good enough vaccine to where it's nearly was completely eradicated at one time. I believe there have been some single-digit cases in some countries that would be otherwise considered third world, I believe, by former standards or current standards. But anyway, again, small things making a big difference. Closing down public pools and public baths saved countless children. The small act of washing one's hands. Say who knows if you're alive today because of what Ignaz came up with in 1847. Who knows? So some things to think about as far as, like I said, small things making a big difference. Last but not least, I just kind of want to leave a quote that I came across. I actually didn't know about it initially, but I was listening to a new podcast on the Rich Roll podcast, one of my favorite athletes, writers. Rich Roll is a famous endurance athlete, kind of sort of pioneered this ultra athlete, competing in like multiple Ironmans. I think he did like 5 or 6 Ironmans in 5 or 6 days consecutively. And just an incredible human being on top of that. But was listening to his most recent podcast with Ryan Holiday, who subsequently is one of my favorite authors and modern day philosophers. You guys might know him as he's, I don't know, other than Tim Ferriss, has probably, repopularized or brought back Stoicism into popular culture. But he brought up this quote from Viktor Frankl, the author of Man's Search for Humanity. And Viktor Frankl is a famous Holocaust survivor and concentration camp survivor and creator of logotherapy. And this quote from Viktor Frankl that was from Man's Search for Meaning, which I've read. I didn't remember this, and when he brought it back up, I thought on it and went back to that part and found it in the book and kind of reread it. And it's been really been on my mind a lot, because there's because of politics and stuff like that, we've sort of created 2 classes of people right now: the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. And not my words, the politicians that are running the country I currently reside in, and I'm a citizen of, their words. That this quote is, could be self-serving to either one of those classes, and or schools of thought in regards to, vaccination mandates. And here's the quote is as follows: freedom is in danger of degenerating into mere arbitrariness unless it is lived in terms of responsibleness. That is why I recommend the Statue of Liberty on the East Coast be supplemented by a statue of responsibility on the West Coast. So is what Victor is saying there, or what I interpret that as, is liberty versus responsibility. It reminds me of something, one of a guy I consider a guru of mine, Ram Dass, stated. Gandhi had on Gandhi's tomb, and Gandhi made this statement when he was alive. Something to the effect of, think of every action you take in this world and how it will affect the poorest man alive. Now, what action do you take? If you're on the beach with a frisbee, do you throw the frisbee? What do you do? And obviously it's an extreme example, but it makes you, it doesn't make you, it gives you an opportunity to frame. Yeah, I like that. It gives you an opportunity to frame the idea of freedom and responsibility differently, and the consequences of our actions. Anyways, that's all I have for today. You guys have a fantastic Saturday. Thank you for listening. Bored to Death Podcast. We'll talk to you guys soon. Mwah.